Hello, everybody. Welcome to this pre-lab video. This video is going to help you prepare for the lab assignment that we're going to be working on in class on Thursday and Friday this week. So the lab that we are doing is one of the online simulations, and it's going to be allowing us to study the effects of light on the rate of photosynthesis. And so we know that photosynthesis is a process where light energy is captured and converted by plants and other photosynthetic organisms. And that light energy gets converted into food or chemical energy. One of the factors that affects the rate of photosynthesis is the presence of light. So light is one of the things necessary in order for photosynthesis to occur. So the question you're going to be thinking about as you do this lab will be, how does light intensity impact plant photosynthesis? The word intensity, so light intensity, just refers to the brightness of light. So if it's very bright light, that means it's a very high intensity. If it's very low or dim light, that means that it's low intensity. This document here, you will be opening it with Cami. I will post it to Schoology, and on Thursday, Friday, I'll help you all open it. But basically, you're going to be answering the questions here. Number one, describe how you're going to estimate the rate of photosynthesis. This will be based off of part one of the experiment. Part two, again, you're going to collect data from the experiment that's done on Savaas online textbook. And I'll show you how to get there in a moment. And what you're going to do is you're going to record the results of the experiment in this table here. And you'll notice that this data table shows us a few different things. First off, if we look at the top, it says light intensity, which is measured in a unit that we call candelas per meter squared. That's just like saying inches or miles or gallons. It's just a measure of light intensity. And you see all of these values below. The lower the number is, the lower the number, the lower the light intensity. That means that it's darker or dimmer light. If you see a very big number, that means there's a very high intensity, which means there is very bright light. And then those in the middle, those are various different intensities of light. And so the way that we're going to be tracking how photosynthesis is responding to the light intensity is by measuring the amount of carbon dioxide used every hour by two different plants. One plant that you're going to study is the tomato plant, which we learn here prefers the sun, so it likes being in bright light. And the oxalis plant, which prefers to be in the shade or in low intensity light. ppm stands for parts per million. That's just a way that we measure carbon dioxide. And so in the experiment, you're going to be changing. So first, you're going to start off with probably the tomato plant, and you're going to work your way through the different light intensities. Maybe you'll start off by putting the tomato in very low light intensity, so in the shade, and then you'll record how much carbon dioxide that plant used right here. Then you'll move on to the next light intensity. Again, you'll select that option in the lab and then record your results here. When you've done all of the data for the tomato plant, you're going to repeat it again, this time with the oxalis plant. And again, you'll start off with the low light intensity, record whatever result the experiment tells you, and you'll write that down there, and repeat for all the other light intensities. By the end of the lab, you need to have this whole data table complete, as well as question number one. Then you will move on to part three. Part three has you moving different things around in the experiment just to figure out which plants like sun, full sun, which ones like partial sun, and which ones prefer the shade. And so now I'll take you to the lab. So this lab, oops, let me pause this real quick. All right, so this lab is found in the Savaas Realize online textbook. So to get to Savaas Realize, you start off in Schoology and you click on the Savaas Easy Bridge link, and then you get to this home page. Here, you're going to go to the classes section and click on, you should see that there's a new assignment. Otherwise, you click on classes and you'll select the assignments. And it'll be the one at the very top titled Science Skills Activity, the Effect of Light on the Rate of Photosynthesis. So this is where you'll access it. When you get into the lab, this is what it's going to look like. And so here is our setup. It tells us we are using the plexiglass box to measure the effect of light intensity on photosynthesis in sun and in shade plants. And since plants take up carbon dioxide from the air to use during photosynthesis, an approximate rate of photosynthesis can be determined by measuring the decrease in carbon dioxide in the air. So a way that we're going to be able to measure photosynthesis is by seeing how much carbon dioxide the plants use up, because they use carbon dioxide to make sugar. When assembled, gas exchange into and out of this box contraption can be controlled, allowing for the monitoring of gas levels. So basically in this lab, there's going to be a box that's sealed. Inside of that box, that sealed box will be the plants. And so first off, we have that light is provided by 6,300 watt bulbs. And the bulb sits above a 6 centimeter water bath, just to kind of prevent it from overheating the plants. So there's light that comes from these light bulbs. And the water absorbs the heat from the lamps, but allows most of the light to pass through. All right. Then we get to this other layer right here, this like white looking thing. And that is actually a layer of cheesecloth. And that's the way that we're going to change the light intensity. So cheesecloth is basically just a fabric, and the more layers of this cheesecloth there are, the lower the light intensity will be. Because imagine if you have if you have one very thin cloth between a light bulb and a plant, the plant can still get some light. But if you put a bunch of layers of cloth in between the light and then the plant that's down below, then that plant is going to get a lot more shade. So basically, the cheesecloth acts as a shade and it will decrease the light intensity. The plants are able to get air because they need to get carbon dioxide from the air. And it enters through these little tubes on the side, or this tube on the side over here. And this has a set concentration of carbon dioxide. And then there's another hole that allows one leaf or frond to be placed in the box. The hole is then sealed with putty to keep air from leaving. Under the box, another water layer helps keep the box at a constant temperature. And lastly, measurements of carbon dioxide concentration are made as the air enters and leaves the box using infrared gas analyzer. The amount of carbon dioxide removed from the air indicates the rate of photosynthesis. That's the key point here. That's how we're going to measure whether photosynthesis is happening more or less, by measuring the amount of carbon dioxide that gets removed from the air in here by the plant. Because if the plant is doing a lot of photosynthesis, it's going to use more carbon dioxide. And so here is the beginning setup, or the part 2, the rate of photosynthesis. The way that this works is that you're going to first select one of the plants. So right here, I've selected the tomato plant. You can see that there's a tomato plant right there. And right now it is telling me that the carbon dioxide going in is at 300, carbon dioxide going out is at 295. So overall, there is a change of about 5 parts per million of carbon dioxide. And that was at light intensity 5,380. So at the lowest light intensity. And so this number right here, 5, the change, I'm going to be recording that over here, 5. Then I'm going to move on to the next number, 10,000. Notice how these numbers changed on the meter. Now there is still 300 going in, but now 288 parts per million of carbon dioxide is going out. So this time, more carbon dioxide got used up. We had 12 parts per million of carbon dioxide that are being used. And so this number 12 is what I'm going to be writing over here. And so you'll keep doing that for all of the different light intensities. Again, you'll change and record and observe what's happening. When you're done with the tomato plant, you're going to switch it to the oxalis plant. And here's the oxalis plant. And same thing, you're going to click on each one of the light intensities and record your answers in this table. Once you have recorded all the answers in the table, so all of the rates of change in the table, you're going to take this information and write it down in your lab worksheet. Remember, this is the lab worksheet. So again, here, this is where you're going to write down all those numbers that you recorded so that you have it and you have it ready to turn it in. Once you have recorded the information that you had in the notebook, you're going to click Next. And here is part 3. Remember, the answers to part 3 you are also writing down in your lab worksheet. And so part 3 tells us that we have 3 new plants to add to our garden. We're going to use graphs of carbon dioxide use versus light intensity to determine the best growing conditions for each plant. So basically, we have these 3 plants. We'll say that there's the first, the second, and the third. You're going to tell me, does the first plant prefer full sunlight, partial sunlight, or shade? Does the second one prefer full sunlight, partial sunlight, or shade? And same thing with the last one, full sunlight, partial sunlight, or shade. The way that you're going to figure this out is by looking at their graphs. And so if you look at this, it tells us how much carbon dioxide the plant is using. The more carbon dioxide it uses, that means, once it reaches this flat point, that tells us that it's at its max carbon dioxide consumption. And so that's its maximum level of photosynthesis. So for example, this plant here, the light intensity reaches all the way kind of around here, and that's where the line or the curve starts to flatten out. And so that's the highest point kind of around this area. So this plant likes this, you could say like a level 3 of light intensity, because notice there's 1, 2, 3. So I'm saying about a 3 or 4 of light intensity. And that's when it reaches maximum photosynthesis. Then we can look at the next one. This plant, notice at what point it reaches maximum rate of photosynthesis. Ask yourself, does this plant like having a bright light more than this plant or less? So does this plant prefer more sunlight compared to this one or less? And you got one more plant over here. Again, notice at what points of light intensity this plant reaches maximum rate of photosynthesis. I think it's helpful if you look at them all on the same graph. So I think there is a way for you to look at that. Let me see if I can find it. or I guess not. Okay, so you're just gonna have to click between each of them here. So click, close out, click and close out. Same thing over here. And so each time you ask yourself, which of these plants reaches photosynthesis at a higher light intensity. So once you see the line go flat, that means at this point, that is how much light that plant prefers. So kind of right here. All right, so thank you for watching this video. If you're watching it, you definitely got some helpful hints for the lab, especially on this last part, because I know it's a bit confusing here. But basically, when you start seeing the line flatten out, that means that it's reached its maximum rate of photosynthesis. So for this one, it was kind of like around this area. And light intensity is getting higher as you go to more towards the right. So you're basically looking, where does the line become flat? And that's the point at which that plant prefers to be. So once you're finished looking at the experiment, you're going to go over here to your the document, and you're going to fill in part 3 and tell me which plant prefers full sun. So tell me plant number 1, 2, or 3. Same thing here, 1, 2, or 3. And then which plant prefers shade, 1, 2, or 3. Once you're done with that, there will be some analyzing questions, which you will turn in when you complete the whole document. All right, so I'll see you all in class on Thursday and Friday. Thank you for watching this video. It's really going to help you out, and you have something to go back to if in case you need help.